How do you do, members and friends of the American Association of University Women? This is your narrator speaking from your nation's capital by special transcription. Freda Kirchwey, editor and publisher of The Nation, is the only woman owner of a national magazine in the United States. Miss Kirchwey is well known for her clear and vigorous writing, her broad grasp of world problems and domestic affairs, and her practical devotion to the cause of democracy. And now, Miss Kirchwey speaking from New York.
Members of the American Association of University Women, meeting in session all over the United States at your remarkable convention without travel, I greet you with admiration today, admiration for your patriotism and your ingenuity. I can't imagine a more effective way of crystallizing the opinion of a great organization and making it felt both nationally and locally. Many of you joining in today's deliberation would never have been able, especially at a time like this, to attend a single convention meeting in a single city. By the device originated in your convention program committee, you can share actively in proceedings which ordinarily would come to you after the event in the form of printed reports. I suppose the convention without travel will not be adopted as a permanent institution. Probably it shouldn't be. The officers and elected delegates of a national organization need to get together once in a while to plan and reach decisions and get acquainted with each other. But this nationwide convention in session today is a unique adaptation to the period of continuous emergency in which we live, and I'm very proud to contribute to its deliberations. You're not an easy group to talk to. Perhaps I should be glad I don't have to meet you face to face. To discuss the responsibilities of university women in this time of crisis, before a group of women who have shouldered those responsibilities as energetically as you have done, would be gratuitous. I have known of your work as any intelligent citizen knows of it, that is, sketchily and inaccurately. But recently, in preparation for this august hour, I boned up on the detailed program and activities of the AAUW. I was not only impressed, I was considerably deflated. The suggestions I might have advanced today stared back at me from the pages of your journal, your excellent director's letter, your innumerable studies and leaflets, not in the form of advice and aspiration, but as accomplishments or well-defined program. You don't know, I suspect, how formidable the literature of your association appears when even a fair sampling of it is tackled at a single sitting. All I can say at this first convention, held since 1941, is that the AAUW seems to me to have done a notable war job. Its contribution has been effective and most imaginative. Its understanding of the equally tough job ahead of us is realistic, courageous, but without illusion. Keep going as you are going, and your influence on this ominous age will be as important as that of any private voluntary group in the country. There's just one thing I would like to say to this meeting of educated women that may perhaps heighten your justified belief in the significance of the role your association has been called upon to play. Generally speaking, I don't like to speak generally about women. I know we are sometimes credited with special qualities as citizens. We're supposed, for example, to be more concerned with human values than men are, independent of the pressures of direct economic interests. We're even supposed to be more practical than men, congenital collectors of brass tacks. But in many years of editing a journal concerned with all sorts of political and human problems, and directed to progressive people of both sexes, I've noticed very little difference in the response registered or the opinions expressed by men and by women. Differences may exist, but I don't think they merit as much attention as they get. As citizens, men and women are very similar, I believe, and neither sex can afford to patronize or depreciate the other. But educated women, indeed all women who value the advancement in their status won by the energy and courage of those who came before us, have reason to develop one particular attitude to a degree matched by men. For special reasons of their own, women should develop a fanatic attachment to the institutions and vital concepts of democracy. Perhaps this is self-evident, but after the experience of the past 6 years, nothing that touches the preservation of democratic life should be completely self-evident. Our old assumption that democracy could be taken for granted has been blasted to dust by bomb and shell fire and tortured to death in Nazi concentration camps. The point I want to make is this. The educated woman is a late and rather fragile fruit of the democratic process. All she is, all she symbolizes, all she has won, all she can do in the world is nothing more than a single aspect of democracy. In a fascist society, education itself suffers fatal distortion, but men of all professions can, if they accept its tenets, function somehow under tyranny. Women can function too, but only within the limits assigned to them. In other words, they can bear children. But firm as the laws of heavenly bodies is the rule that women under tyranny may not be educated or develop in any way their capacities as whole human beings. This is axiomatic, but axioms are easy to tuck away and forget. It is easy to forget that the very existence of a body like the AAUW, indeed all the interests and activities of the 75,000 individual women who comprise it, would have been obliterated if the struggle of these last 6 years had ended, as it so easily might have, in Axis victory. Women cannot afford to let democracy go down. They have every reason that men have to fight for its existence, and they have an added reason that relates exclusively to their own long, slow progress toward full participation in human society. Today, democracy has been rescued by the certainty of military victory over the powers that explicitly promised its extinction. It has not been secured for any appreciable future. The democratic process is subject to many sorts of attacks, and it is an ironic fact that in time of war it must even limit its own functions, sometimes to the point of undermining its very foundations, in order successfully to defend its existence. After this war, the job of mending begins, the job of modernizing. The democracy, on which the hopes of all educated women depend, has survived, but only just survived. And one very urgent truth has emerged from its struggle for life. We have learned that the democratic process must be strengthened in all its parts and all over the world if it is to be strong anywhere. That is a new truth. It's a truth born of planes that cross the Atlantic in 6.5 hours, of news that flies around the world in seconds, of technical developments that can be set going in Canton, China, almost as well as in Canton, Ohio. It is a most explosive truth, but a challenging and invigorating one. Before the war, in the black days of weakness and appeasement that were so much worse in many ways than war itself, we used to say, but not loudly enough, peace is indivisible. It was true. As Ethiopia and Spain and Austria and Czechoslovakia and, on the other side of the world, Manchuria and northern China went down one by one, we learned the need of collective unity if peace were to be maintained. At least I hope we learned it. Today we must learn, but I trust by less agonizing means, that democracy is also indivisible. Your own post-victory program of study and action shows that you accept this truth. I cannot add a single item to that program. All I want to add today is my reiterated belief that a peculiarly heavy responsibility rests on the shoulders of American women. Let me put this belief more plainly. All over the world, a revolutionary change is taking place. The war is only a horrifying incident of that revolution. Fascism itself grew as a cancer grows out of unhealthy economic and political tissue. The attempt after the last war to direct the affairs of the world on the basis of unplanned capitalist exploitation and untamed nationalist competition resulted in universal instability, mass unemployment, misery, fear, and an inevitable resort to dictatorship and war. Europe was run by a conspiracy of industrial and financial interests far too powerful to be broken by the divided, fragmented efforts of the democratic elements in each country. In the end, those interests could be broken only by war. Today, the world has a new chance to smash their power. It won't be easy, even after the last gun has been fired. For the men who ran Europe, the men who set up fascism in power or collaborated with it and took orders from it after it came to power, are still around, planning to take over, to go on from where they quit. If they're allowed to do so, we shall spin back into the old cycle of insecurity, discontent, dictatorship, and war. Whether this time the people will win, no one can say. I believe they will. I believe the bankruptcy of the pre-war order, if you call it order, is now evident to millions of people who never knew even what was wrong before. I believe the ordinary people, Europe's workers and intellectuals in particular, including the women, have learned how to organize and how to fight. I believe the hopelessness of attempting to fasten on a country a regime hostile to the popular will is becoming apparent, even to reactionary leaders among the victorious powers. But I am sure, too, that the victory of the democratic forces in Europe will either be greatly accelerated or disastrously delayed, according to which way the influence of the United States is thrown. So far, we have given no sure indication of our intentions. Too many times, as in Spain, our mighty power has secured the survival of the very same sort of tyranny our arms were elsewhere attempting to crush out of existence. Our lack of consistency in support of the democratic cause has bewildered our friends in other lands, but they are still our friends, and they are still fighting our fight. I believe that a primary task for American women lies in mastering the facts concerning our foreign policy, and then making a determined effort to democratize it. Your association, in common with almost every enlightened organization in the country, is doing a remarkably fine job of education in the principles of international security. You have helped build the skeleton structure of a world organization. You have every reason to go ahead with confidence. But less has been done to create the democratic underpinning on which that structure must rest if it is to last. I wonder sometimes when people so casually dismiss the League of Nations as an obsolete Model T organization, whether they stop to consider what was really wrong with the League, why it finally broke down. It had structural defects, surely. So has the new United Nations setup. But what was wrong with the League was its foundation. It rested on a system of society that was obsolete. In fact, the League was far, far ahead of its time. And the society on which it was built. It collapsed because the nations that made it up were unable to create equality and stability, because democracy itself was crumbling. Only a security organization founded in democracy, the real thing, the kind of democracy so concretely visualized in the AAUW program, only a security organization founded on that sort of democracy can possibly maintain peace in this world. And that is the single point I wanted to make, or perhaps it is a double one. The indivisible nature of democracy and the special responsibility of the educated American woman to see that it is effectively applied everywhere in the world, in the State Department at Washington, as well as in her own hometown.
Thank you, Miss Freda Kirchwey.